I put this to my fellow practitioners as some guidance, I guess, on how we might choose our behavior in very live situations, sometimes difficult ones, where a decision must be taken on how best to work with either an individual or a group. And this is based on my own experience. So I put before you four options: to appease one or more learners, to accommodate them, to challenge them, or to confront them. And they're very different, although they do merge into each other. There's, for instance, an element of appeasing which becomes accommodation, and in the perception, at least, of one or other party, challenge could become confrontation or the other way around. So there are elements of imprecision here. It's perceptual. Does one person see accommodation as appeasement? Is challenge seen as confrontation? Whatever. Anyway, let me just run through these briefly, and I may give some examples on the way. And the idea of this is that in a situation where we're working with one or more learners, we do have options. We can push, we can choose not to, we can be quite spiky if we choose and if we feel it appropriate, and if we make the right judgment. There are lots of ifs and nuances here. If we get these wrong, we impact negatively, potentially, on the learning value and the development of one or more people. And I'll go into that a bit more detail. So let's run around these. Let's start with appeasing. What do I mean by appeasing? I guess what I mean by appeasing is just accepting where one learner, if in a coaching environment or a group, do or don't want to do. So I found myself many times over the past 43 years of working in learning development, I find myself wanting to push a bit harder, wanting to do something which I feel has value, and I get a bit of pushback. And whether that comes from the one individual or from a group, I choose to say, okay, we won't do that then. And I can choose to do that sometimes, at least, in the belief that it was the right decision. Okay, if I'd chosen to push that a bit harder, it wouldn't have got me anywhere. It might have caused friction. It might not have been at this stage in a day, a week, a year, whatever, an hour. It might not be the right thing to do. So there are times when we just say, right, I'd like to do this, but I'll go with where you want to be. So we move into accommodation. This is a bit stronger than appeasing. It isn't just about accepting the contrary position of one or more learners. It's about saying, okay, I know you don't want to do this. I know you don't see value in this, perhaps. I know you don't yet see where I'm going with this. Bear with me, because I'd still like to give this a go. I still think it's going to be worth engaging in. So you go a stage further than appeasing, where you say, okay, you don't want to do this, that's fine. In accommodation, it's about saying, let's have a debate about this. Let's talk about, which might take 2 minutes, it might take longer. Let's talk about whether there's value here, because I think there is. And in accommodation, ultimately, you concede and say, okay, we've had the discussion. Either I've come round to your point of view, I see now that this isn't the right thing for you, or you just say, all right, I still don't agree with you, but I'll go along with where you're at. So it's a different place to appeasing. You then move into what I call more crunchy country, where we actually don't accommodate. We go a bit further than accepting that the learner or learner's positions are those that will fall back upon, adopt, whatever. So challenge. Challenge is about saying, right, I'm making the judgment here that we're going to do this, or this is something I see value in that you don't see yet. It's where you push something, you actually get to an outcome position that is different to accommodation because you are following the agenda that, in your professional opinion, is the most suitable, the most likely to achieve the result you're seeking. And of course, the result you're seeking might be different from the perception or the reality of the outcomes that a learner or learners might be. Maybe you've got more ambition for them than they have for themselves. Maybe you want to push them harder than they want to be pushed. Challenge is about saying, we're going to do this. And we're going to do this because I feel it's the right thing to do. That has implications. And you've got to stand by your judgment or accept it was the wrong thing to do. So you haven't appeased, you haven't accommodated, you've actually pushed harder and you've pushed through the opposition there might be. Now, confrontation is different to challenge. Confrontation is almost standing there on its own. And confrontation is something that I have chosen as an option on occasion, not that very often, but on very memorable occasions. And confrontation is about saying, hang on, this isn't helpful. What I'm seeing from you, which might be a member of a group, is unhelpful behavior. Now, you might choose to have that confrontation, discussion, conversation in front of everyone else, and I've done that on occasion. Or you might choose to have it individually, one-to-one, at a break time or whatever. I have found, typically, not always, but usually, that a confrontation conversation that might go along the lines of, what you're saying or doing or behaving here is, in my professional opinion, unhelpful. I want you to stop doing that, please. And if it persists to say, I'm not at all happy with how this is going, we need a conversation about this. Now, that conversation might take place in public, in front of a group of people, or it might take place, like I say, more privately. To not have that conversation, to not have a confrontative conversation that says, let me explain, I'm having a problem with this, you're getting in the way of other people, you seem to be following an agenda, you don't want to be here, whatever it is. It's about saying, in the interest of others, or if you're working one-to-one, in your own interest, I think we need to agree there's a better way to do this. To not do that, I think, can cause a truly professional person to say, I should have done that. I shouldn't have let that person get away with it. I shouldn't have let that person dominate that group, slag off other people, the organization they might be working within, whatever it is. Some people are unwilling participants in a learning event, for instance, and they make that known. I, for one, am prepared to have those confrontative conversations, not in an argumentative, difficult, raised voice way, but in a calm, professional, and direct way. And that's the one I guess I'm focusing upon because it's the most difficult. It's easy to appease. It's relatively easy to accommodate. It's not too difficult to challenge and say, I'm going to take us somewhere you don't yet see value, for instance. Confrontation is on its own and is something which may define professional facilitator in terms of, do you have that capability? Can you seek? You don't always get to the point you want. Can you seek to change someone's behavior positively on their own and others' behalf? We don't look for confrontation with learners, but I think we should be prepared to have it when it's required or we judge that it's required. But I hope there's some thought there. I hope there's some ideas that you might adopt. And as ever, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, then I'm very happy to have those conversations, either by email or I'm very happy to get together perhaps in Teams or Zoom, for instance. So I hope there's something there.